Mention Baberspan in Northwest Province and off-road racers' ears prick up. This is off-road country and the home of one of the biggest bird sanctuaries in South Africa. Baberspan races are the stuff of legend. But this year, the Baberspan 200 Round 8 of the Northern Regions Championship moved to Maritsane between Mafeking and Sannieshof.
Man, ons het nou die jaar met die baie reën, dat die hele roete by Leeupan is onder water, maar ons altyd langs die pan, die time trials en die goed hou. Dis hoekom ons nou hiernatoe geskuif het en die ouens het ons baie tegemoet gekom. Hulle het 'n lekker terrein en 'n lekker opset hierso by die start-finish.
Regional championships are a breeding ground for ABSA National Series stars of the future, and two teenagers, Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman, currently lead the Northern Regions Championship.
It was a funny season. It was just me coming out trying to get ready for racing next year, and we started to get first-class productions and coming second overall and things like that. So it's been good, actually.
After 7 of the 9 rounds in the Northern Regions Series, Venter and van Alleman hold an 11-point lead over CJ Labuskaghni and Andre Brits. While regional championships are an important nursery for the future, they also provide an opportunity for older competitors to enjoy their racing away from the intense pressures of national championship competitions. One such competitor is veteran former national champion Gil Null, who still loves to go racing.
Yeah, well, we're going to try our luck. I mean, we had our bad lucks this year already, so it's a nice and windy day. I don't think we're going to have a lot of dust or mud. So we're going to go all out and see whether we can get some good points in this time, same as last time, but we're going to try our best.
Off-road racing is a family-orientated sport, and at regional and national level, husbands and wives, fathers and sons, and daughters and brothers and sisters use the sport for a little family bonding. Among the many father and son combinations to be found in off-road racing are Tony and Michael Gavea.
Never been here before. I think it's going to be very similar to Piet Plessis. Loose sand. I see on the pace notes a lot of long straights and also a lot of twisties. So I think it's just going to be awesome. Yeah.
Another father and son team in Jaco and Jan van Aert went to the Baberspan 200 with a commanding lead in the Special Vehicle Championship, with Gil Null and Johan de Klerk in a solid second place. The Baberspan 200 also provided an opportunity for Dion Boysens to get the feel of a bat previously campaigned by national star Colin Matthews.
This is an A-class machine. It's a Bat Spec 0. The engine is a 4.2 Audi with an automatic gearbox in it. It's Colin Matthews' old car. Yeah, and it's our first time behind the wheel. As you've said, we tried to go out for a ride before the time, but we haven't had the chance. So today will be the first time.
A number of ABSA National Championship crews also used the Baberspan 200 as an opportunity to shake down their cars. Among them were Potchefstroom crew Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy in the Potch Plastics Toyota Hilux, which has undergone recent development. They were joined by Free Staters Louw de Bruin and Rian Kreiling in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger, with both teams out in SP-class production vehicles. Among the special vehicles, Boysens and Kobus Fourie were getting to grips with the ex-Colin Matthews bat. The national crews were not scored as part of the Baberspan 200 and indulged in their own little unofficial race, with Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy falling by the wayside. Louw de Bruin and Rian Kreiling set the fastest time in the Rubicon Ford Ranger. Although they were around 9 minutes behind the Rubicon pair, Francois Conradi and Andrew van der Westhuizen also had a good run in a bat that runs in Class P in the National Series. Dion Boyens and Kobus Fourie were not so lucky in their bat and were among the non-finishers, along with brothers Gerard and Laurens du Plessis, who were also shaking down a car recently bought from Herman Sulwald. Although there was nothing at stake for the ABSA National Championship crews, there were encouraging performances from Louw de Bruin and Rian Kreiling in the Rubicon Racing Ford and Francois Conradi with Andrew van der Westhuizen. National Class D champion Dion Venter was on hand to give son Jason and Vincent van Alleman a little moral support before the start of their race. Northern Regions competitors start according to their championship positions, with races scored on corrected time. Special Vehicle Championship leaders Jaco and Jan van Aert were out in the home-built Janko running in Class P and led away Class B leaders Gilnel and Johan de Klerk in the KEC Zarco Truggy. Next up were Class B crew Tinus Leroux and Gustav Pinar in a Nissan-powered special with the Mafeking Motor Club pair, followed by another Class B pairing, Tony and Michael Gavea, in the nicely turned-out bat. The father and son crew went into the race lying fourth in the Special Vehicle Championship and were having their first taste of Baberspan conditions, with the race enjoying national championship status in days gone by. The Baberspan 200 was run over 3 loops of 60 kilometers, with Rustenburg Motor Club pair Johan Mitchell and Cornelius Pieterse quickly into the overall lead and first in Class P in a Sandmaster. On corrected time, Mitchell and Pieterse had moved ahead of overall Special Vehicle Championship leaders Jaco and Jan van Aert in the Janko. Out in a home-built car, the father and son crew were looking for an impressive 6th overall victory of the season, but had fallen 60 seconds behind the Mitchell-Pieterse car. A little further back, teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman quickly went to the front of the production vehicle category when they went past the Ford of Lapislava Skachny and Andre Brits, which had come to a halt on the side of the road. Out in the 4x4 Megawatt Toyota Hilux, the youngsters started 7th on the road but were working well together. They'd built up a head of steam and were making steady progress through the field. The 4x4 Megaworld pair have made a big impression on the ABSA National Championship scene this season, and apart from running at the head of the production vehicle category, Venter and Van Alleman were also leading the Class E contingent. It was shaping up to be another impressive performance from the two youngsters. The Mafeking Motor Club pair of Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg were quick out of the starting blocks in the Sharpline Zarco and had lost no time in moving to the front of the Class B field. They were being chased by the LG Toyota Hilux in the hands of Jean Boshoff and Lotte Klein, who were second in the production vehicle category, and in Class E, where they were running a minute behind Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman. Not far behind the Hilux was the Toyota Land Cruiser of Jaco du Plessis and Louis Bester, with the Vryburg crew running at the front of Class D. A 3-cylinder donkey cart wasn't part of the race, with the driver anxiously casting backward glances to keep tabs on the likes of Baberspan crew Andries Meinhardt and Louis Fischer, who were going along steadily and had slotted into second in Class B. They were 1 minute and 50 seconds behind Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg, but were running around a half a minute ahead of Gilnel and Johan de Klerk, who had scored points in 6 of the 7 rounds of the Northern Region Series. Consistency has always been a Gilnel forte and took him to multiple South African championships in Class B. Nel and Johan de Klerk were again running steadily, but the KEC Zarco Truggy was starting to come under a little pressure from the Vos van Wyk VW Special that was around a half a minute behind the Zarco. Class B was starting to develop into an interesting contest, with Vos and Van Wyk being chased by John Boxhoorn, who was only another 22 seconds in arrears in the single-seated WPP. Behind Class B frontrunners Johan Mitchell and Cornelius Pieterse and Jaco and Jan van Aert, it was turning out to be hard work. Vryburg crew Dion Creer and Gerry Fourie were just over 15 minutes behind the leaders in a Toyota-powered special vehicle that did not have any ground clearance problems. Behind them, the Ford of Andre van den Berg and Willem Dunnen had dropped to just over 10 minutes behind Class E leaders Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman, while Tinus Leroux and Gustav Pinar were more than 11 minutes off the Class B pace. It had also been a tough morning for Jaco Visser and Elgar Rademeier in a Mitsubishi Colt. They were more than 11 minutes behind Class D leaders Jaco du Plessis and Louis Bester, who had set a cracking pace in the Toyota Land Cruiser. It may have been a tough morning for du Plessis and Bester, but these enthusiasts were full of the joys of spring. The father and son pair of Tony and Michael Gavea were also having what could be described as a difficult morning. After starting 4th on the road in the bat, they'd run into problems that had gradually dropped them down the running order, and they were now motoring along nearly 12 minutes behind the Class B leaders. A little further back on the road, the Lichtenburg crew of Willie Wellman and Charlie van Wyk were having a steady run that had taken their Ford team to the front of Class F, where they were the only survivors. At the end of the first loop, Mitchell and Hubert led the Van Arts in the special vehicle category with a string of Class B cars in the top 10. Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman were the production vehicle pace setters ahead of Boshoff and Klein and Duplessis with Bester.
Janil de Villiers crossed the finish line this afternoon in Argentina as the victor of the 2009.
South Africa has a proud record on the Dakar Rally, capped by the Janil de Villiers victory for Volkswagen in 2009. After disappointment 4 years ago, Century Racing pair Mark Corbett and Francois Jordan will this year mount another attack on the world's toughest motor race.
Well, everything's in the go now. We don't have much time to get ready for Dakar. The first truck leaves in about 2 weeks. It's got all the spares on it, and so we're committed now. We're off.
Former South African champion Francois Jordan will end a long sabbatical to partner Mark Corbett on this year's event in the Century Racing CR4, with the pair hoping for better luck after their abortive first attempt at the Dakar when the race was cancelled.
Yeah, Francois is back in the navigating seat. We had an attempt on Dakar about 4 years ago where it was cancelled. Francois is going to navigate there, but we've taken the safe option and Francois is back in the car.
Jordan is a veteran of the 2004 Dakar, where he finished 7th with Janil de Villiers and brings a wealth of experience to the Century Racing team.
Yes, we've done some practicing in the car over the last weekends and so, see the seating position, see if I don't get scared anymore. And I'm going to get back into the car with Mark at Bloemfontein, that we can get the language right and just to know each other a little more. We're also going to Walvis Bay at the end of the month to go and do the normal sand practicing, getting stuck, getting out, using the sand ladders, getting used to the car in the sand, doing deflation tests and so on.
Yeah, it's very exciting. The one big worry for Dakar is obviously reliability. I think we're fast enough, we've proved that. So I think reliability is going to play a factor, but we're putting all new parts on the car. And then obviously the Dakar is quite long, so for the rest day, we plan to almost replace every single component in the car.
Well, Mark is doing it all out of his own pocket. We're not relying on anybody overseas. They've got the truck that they're building here to carry all the spares. There's some vehicles on the other side that gets rented, and it's a family affair. Some of the local blokes are going to help us, Colin, his dad, Rudy, of course, and Julian that builds the car. So I'm basically taking Rudy's place. I hope not to cross with me, but we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Rudy has a lot of experience at Dakar. He's done about 5 Dakars as a crew chief for various different teams, and I think he'll be invaluable running the car.
Although he retired from competition at the end of 2007, Jordan has been actively involved in off-road racing management, and with a little help from the likes of Janil de Villiers and Ralph Pitchford, he will be fully prepared for the Dakar Rally.
No, it's much more than that. I'm also getting assistance from Ralph Pitchford, that's my good friend, and he's been there a couple of times. He's going to help me a lot with the navigation and all the logistics around it. Janil is giving us some tips. He's been there many times. So we're getting a lot of help from our friends.
There's nothing like this. This emotion. This tension. This color. And this sound. There's nothing like this. Because there's nothing like Formula One. This is F1. Live and available in HD. Exclusive to Supersport. Proudly sponsored by Tiger Wheel and Tire.
Today I don't feel like doing anything. I'll be lounging on the couch, just chilling in my Snuggie. Turn the TV on so they can teach me how to Dougie. 'Cause in my castle, I'm the freaking man. Oh, yes, I said it. I said it. I said it 'cause I can. Today I don't feel like doing anything. Nothing at all.
Take a different road to New Zealand with Kia Ora. Buckle up for the thrills both on and off the field with a unique look into the Rugby World Cup. Get in tune with the fans, the players, and the excitement brewing in the land of the long white cloud. Join the star-studded team of Tane Randall, Matthew Pearce, Corvus Visa, Owen and Kamane, and Bob Skinstad as they broadcast live from our Auckland studio. Cure the homesickness with hosts Peter Davies, Nas Buerta, and a host of other well-known presenters broadcasting live from Johannesburg. Kia Ora. Live at 8 p.m. daily. Exclusive to Supersport. Brought to you by Vodacom.
Any form of motorsport is dangerous, and by its very nature there are hidden dangers that can increase the risk of accidents in off-road racing. Off-road routes take in uncharted waters, and obstacles like ditches, gullies, rocks, tree stumps, and what are known in the trade as lurkers are ever-present dangers that can lead to instant disaster. With the safety of competitors of paramount importance, the latest technology and materials go into the construction of off-road racing cars. Organizations like the FIA, the world controlling body for motorsport, and local associations like Motorsport South Africa lay down rigid rules for the construction of race cars.
The whole building of a motor car is A, to go fast, but B, for the safety of the driver and co-driver. So it's very, very important that the whole design of the car is built in such a way that the driver and co-driver, their safety is paramount. But at the same time, your design has to include the performance of the car. So it's quite an important balance. There's a very firm set of rules in place, how you build the chassis, chassis as in roll cage and chassis itself. So yeah, there's a lot of rules in place, and there's not too many changes you can make to it. You know, the days of a person just building a car and building your own roll cage and having some pipes welded in, they're long gone, and there's a very strict set of rules of how you've got to build it, because it's very important.
In days gone by, race cars, whether for the circuit, rallying or off-road racing, were built without the aid of computers, CAD cams and the like. These days, scientific processes are extensively utilized, and along with modern materials and construction techniques, race cars in any form of competition are built to withstand huge stress levels.
The calculated impact for any frame built with chromoly can take 25 tons hit. You compare that to a 3-story drop on your nose. That's how much it can take before the frame will start deforming. So that's quite a serious impact. 25 tons is a hard hit.
Reigning South African Class P champion Johan van Staden took delivery of the latest Spec 5 bat at the start of this season's ABSA Off-Road Championship. The bat is a South African designed and custom-built off-road racing car and incorporates all the safety features one would expect to find in a vehicle of this nature.
If you hit a tree at 40 to 50 k's an hour, it will be the same. If you hit a tree at 140, 150, the crumple would start then happening. So your frame would then first take the first initial bracing impact of 25 tons and then crumple, like any other car. Your safety zone crumple. So none of that forces or none of that damage will ever come into your cockpit, which again proves that the structural integrity of the cockpit is protected by the front. That's why we have those little called the nudge bars. That will the forces will go to that. If it takes a control arm, the control arm will tear off and go out. That's what you want it. You don't want it to stay intact with the car. It needs to be breaking off and get away, so that the initial impact is taken and the forces are broken, and then obviously your car, rather lose a wheel than it smash into something where there's no crumple zone. It's the safest thing that you can ask for. You want the frame to take the impact. You want it to bend after 25 tons. You want something to break off rather than holding, because it gives you that safety factor.
Former South African champion Neil Woolridge knows all about major accidents. Woolridge and co-driver Kenny Schultheimer walked away from a huge crash at the 2002 Carnival City 400. Unscathed as it was, Woolridge is now team principal of the Ford factory team competing in the ABSA Off-Road Championship and is building a Ford Ranger, which the Ford Motor Company will race in select international cross-country events next year and in the Dakar Rally in 2013. Long-term plans include building cars in South Africa for export to Europe, utilizing latest developments in chassis design.
Yes, very similar to that. A way that a lot of the SUVs are built nowadays, they have no ladder chassis or anything like that. It's just the bucky, as we know it, that has a ladder chassis, and even some of those buckies that are coming out nowadays don't have a ladder chassis either. So there was a bit of controversy when the rules were changed, because it obviously makes it a bit more difficult to build a car for the privateer. But once you get going with the car and you have your design, it's actually quite easier, and I believe at the end of the day probably more cost effective to build it that way. And you can build an actual racing car, and you can build the safety as you really need it, not building around the actual standard chassis. So I think it's a good set of rules.
Assisting Woolridge and his team in Pietermaritzburg to build a revolutionary new Ford Ranger is French engineer Adrien Fabrel.
FIA regulation, there is a audit definite. You can check all the elements. They give the space for the driver, for the co-driver. We have to get a specific width. The roll cage have to get one maximum angle. Like this, also driver and co-driver get a very good cage around them. If there is a crash or something like this, they are safe.
Team Castrol Toyota crew Mark Ronje and Chris Birkin also had cause to be thankful for the inherent safety features built into today's off-road racing cars. Back to the Baberspan 200 at Maritsani in Northwest Province for loops 2 and 3 of the Baberspan 200. The race was the 8th and penultimate round of the Northern Region's Off-Road Championship, with teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman taking a tight hold on proceedings in the production vehicle class. The 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux pair took the Class E lead early in the race and were also gradually tightening their hold on the production car overall championship. Competing in both the regional and national championships, young Venter and van Alleman have made a huge impression in their first full season of off-road racing and look to have a golden future ahead of them. The 4x4 Megaworld pair were making light work of slower traffic and had worked their way to the front of the overall field. Venter and van Alleman were now being chased by Class B and Special Vehicle category leaders Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg, who had done a sterling job in the Zarco but could not match Venter and van Alleman for pace. There were plenty of vantage points for local spectators who were enjoying all the action. A steady run had taken Jean Boshoff and Lotte Klein into second overall in the production vehicle category and second in Class E, where they were around 7 minutes behind Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman. A terrific tussle had developed between the LG Toyota Hilux and the Toyota Land Cruiser of Class D leaders Jaco du Plessis and Louis Bester. On corrected time, only 3 seconds separated the two crews at the finish. Behind overall special vehicle leaders Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg, some running battles had developed in Class B. A superb drive saw John Boxhoorn work his way into second in Class B in the single-seater WPP. Boxhoorn had opened up a gap of around 40 seconds over Andries Meinhardt and Louis Fischer. The Baberspan pair lost a few seconds when they stopped to check on a potential problem, but were soon on their way again. The Meinhardt Fischer car was under a little pressure from veteran Giel Nel and Johan de Klerk in the KAC Zarco. In a trademark performance, the consistent Nel and de Klerk had moved to within 25 seconds of Meinhardt and Fischer and were 4th in Class B and 7th overall. Maintaining a steady pace and simply grinding away at the opposition has been a method that has stood Giel Nel in good stead throughout his career and has won him South African national championship titles. The gap between Giel Nel and Johan de Klerk and Tony and Michael Gavea was around 7 minutes, with the father and son team a further 5 off the pace set by Class B leaders Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg. The Gaveas started the day lying 4th in the overall championship and needed every single point they could muster to catch Tinus Leroux and Gustav Pinard, who started the day 3rd in the special vehicle stakes. Although the gap between the Gavea father and son team and the Class B frontrunners was now approaching 13 minutes, they had 5 minutes to spare on the Vos van Wyk car that was running 6th in Class B and 9th overall. More important from the Gavea's point of view was that they had around 7 minutes in hand over Tinus Leroux and Gustav Pinard and would make up ground in the special vehicle overall championship. There were pockets of spectators all along the route with a terrific duel between Tinus Leroux and Gustav Pinard and the Orca of Arden Pretorius and Sparks Morrison. When all the paperwork was completed, just 2 seconds separated the two cars after 180 kilometers of racing. Not so lucky were Ford crew Chris and Annelien van Jaarsveld.
Nee, wat het gebreek? Wat het gebreek?
Upper bow joint. Zeg maar wat gebreek? Die upper bow joint. Het kom met elke keer en om strap dat ek net kan uitkom.
It was the end of the road for the Van Jaarsvelds, but perseverance was paying off for Johan Griffioen and Keith Solomon in the force-fueled Toyota Hilux. They were running third in Class E and had a couple of minutes to spare on Class P leaders Dion Creer and Gerrie Fourie, with Johan de Beer and Pieter Dreyer the last of the Class E finishers. It had been a truly miserable day for runaway Special Vehicle Championship leaders Jaco and Jan van Aert in the Janko. Their race ended with the car struggling along on three wheels, but in true off-road fashion, the Van Aerts refused to throw in the towel and made it to the end to maintain a 100% finish record this season. That's Vastbyt. Up at the finish, teenagers Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman were putting the finishing touches to a clear run that took them to their fourth production vehicle victory in a row in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux.
We will see when the results come out, because Class E we were still third in class, regional Class E, and I think we have a further lead now in production class, so we'll see when the points come out.
There was also a clean run for special vehicle category in Class B winners Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg, with the Zarco crew coming in around 2 minutes ahead of Gene Boshoff and Lothar Klein, who finished with a flourish and was second in Class E in the LG Toyota Hilux.
Awesome. It was quite quick on stages. There was some nice and tricky stuff around, but a perfect regional race. Soft on the cars, and we enjoyed it tremendously.
In what was a desperately tight finish, Gene Boshoff and Lothar Klein only had 3 seconds to spare on Class D winners Jaco du Plessis and Louis Bester in the Toyota Land Cruiser. The prize for the gutsiest performance of the day, though, had to go to Special Vehicle Championship leaders Jaco and Jan van Aert, who limped to the finish on 3 wheels.
Ja, ons het ons linker voorwiel en regter voorwiel verloor daar by een van daai cautions. Ja, dis dit nou maar plan maak met die eerste kop. Ons wou finish. Smoes.
Jy het eintlik gefinish anyway.
Ja, nee, ons is hierso. Boer maak 'n plan. Ons het so 'n bietjie planne gemaak om hier te kry, maar hy's hierso.
The final results, Jason Venter and Vincent van Alleman take overall and production vehicle honours. Johan Steyn and Sean van der Berg led home the special vehicles, with the Zarco pair also winning Class B. The next event on the off-road calendar is the Himan Auto 400 at the De Brugge military base in Bloemfontein on October the 14th and 15th. Thomas Rundle and Johan Moore lead the production vehicle title chase ahead of Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, with Duncan Foss and Rob Howie. Next on the championship log, Terence Marsh and George Smallberger in the second Regent Racing Nissan Navara, followed by Northwest veterans Yanni Visser and Yorks Leroux. Also in with a mathematical chance of winning the championship are reigning champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Baardenhorst in the factory Ford Ranger, Castrol Toyota pair Anthony Taylor and Chris Birkin, Northwest crew Malcolm Kok and Johan Burger, and former champions Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Stege in the RFS BMW. Catch all the action from the Himan Auto 400 right here on Supersport, your world of champions.